What if the things you desire the most are not slipping away because they are impossible to have, but because you keep flooding them with your own need? What if scarcity is not a curse placed upon you by fate, but a mirror reflecting the value you've forgotten to place on yourself? Every time you beg for attention, every time you chase validation, every time you cling to what doesn't want to stay, you create scarcity with your own hands, not because it was rare to begin with, but because you made yourself too available, too desperate, too willing to give what should have been guarded. Think about the people you once respected, the moments you once longed for, the opportunities you once chased. Why did they lose their magic the moment they were within reach? Scarcity bends the human mind. It tricks us into believing that distance equals worth and that abundance equals insignificance. But maybe, just maybe, scarcity is not about how little there is of something. Maybe it's about how little of yourself you allow to remain untouched, sacred, and untouchable. We live in a world that whispers into our ears from the moment we can understand language, that giving more makes us more lovable, that showing up endlessly makes us indispensable, and that lowering our boundaries ensures acceptance. Yet in that same world, we discover the quiet, painful irony. The more you give, the less you are valued. Scarcity, though painted as a curse, is in truth the mysterious law of human psychology. Machiavelli centuries ago understood this when he wrote that men desire what is difficult to obtain and disregard what is abundant. Still, you resist this truth. You convince yourself that your constant presence will be seen as loyalty, that your constant sacrifices will be noticed as love, that your constant availability will be rewarded as respect. But the laws of the mind don't bend to your good intentions. They punish abundance with disregard. The conflict is this: you are trained to believe love is earned through giving everything, when in reality love often deepens through the discipline of withholding. Think of how desire works in its rawest form. A child ignores the toys scattered across the floor, but suddenly longs for the one toy hidden out of reach. Adults are no different. When something is rare, withheld, difficult, the human heart awakens. When something is easily obtained, it falls into the shadows of indifference. Yet you keep ignoring this truth in your relationships, in your career, in your friendships. You overexpose your essence, convinced that transparency will win trust. But transparency without boundaries kills mystery, and mystery is the birthplace of respect. You respond to every message within seconds, but your quick replies are not read as devotion. They are silently recorded as predictability, and predictability dulls allure. The contradiction runs deep. You long to be seen, yet you vanish behind your own abundance. Scarcity is not about selfishness, it is about power, and power is rarely comfortable. To allow scarcity to breathe in your life means choosing absence when your heart craves presence. It means walking away when every part of you aches to stay. It means holding your silence when your ego is desperate to explain itself. Power lives in restraint, but restraint feels like loss when you are not used to it. You confuse silence with weakness, solitude with punishment, and mystery with rejection. Yet the deeper truth is that without these, there is no reverence. When your voice is always loud, it becomes noise. When your presence is always constant, it becomes wallpaper. People may notice you, but they stop valuing you. The scarcity of your essence creates the weight of your existence. The cruel trick of modern culture is that it tells you to chase visibility at all costs. Share more, speak more, post more, prove more, be seen or risk being forgotten. But visibility is not value, it is exposure. And exposure without mystery creates exhaustion, both for you and for those watching you. What makes the stars above so magnetic is not that they are countless, but that they exist at a distance, untouchable and rare. Their scarcity is what makes you look up and marvel, yet you shrink yourself into a commodity, believing that giving everything will finally buy you what you crave most: respect. The painful conflict is that in doing so, you strip yourself of the very quality that creates respect, your rarity. And once lost, rarity is not easily reclaimed. In relationships, the danger is clearest. You pour yourself endlessly into someone, always available, always forgiving, always waiting. At first they may be grateful, but slowly, without even realizing it, they stop noticing. Your love becomes background music, constant, soothing, but invisible. And then one day, when you finally hold back, when you create scarcity, they panic. They reach out, They notice, they feel your absence like a sudden wound. The tragedy is that you had to disappear to be seen. The misconception you carried was that love is secured by endless giving, when in truth, love is sharpened by the edges of restraint. Not cruelty, not manipulation, but the quiet reminder that you are not infinite, that your essence is not to be consumed without thought. Scarcity also governs ambition and opportunity. Consider how society values gold, diamonds, art, ideas. They are not worshipped because they are inherently better than the countless stones or scribbles scattered across the earth. They are worshipped because they are scarce. And yet, you cheapen yourself by treating your talents, your time, your presence as if they were pebbles. You show up everywhere for everyone, forgetting that not every request deserves your energy, not every stage deserves your voice. The paradox is brutal. In trying to make yourself seen, you dilute your own worth. It is not arrogance to recognize that your energy is finite. It is wisdom. Scarcity, when embraced, is the discipline of channeling yourself only where your presence can ignite true impact. Without that discipline, you become invisible, not because you are unseen, but because you are everywhere at once. The deepest wound of this conflict is emotional. You have been told that if you are not chosen, it is because you are not enough. So you give more, love harder, forgive faster, work longer, thinking that the answer lies in abundance. But abundance without boundaries is self-erasure. It is offering yourself as a banquet to those who will only gorge and walk away without gratitude. The misconception is that your worth is proven through sacrifice, when in reality, sacrifice without scarcity leads only to resentment. The truth that burns, the truth you resist, is that people respect what they cannot easily have. Not because humans are cruel, but because this is how value is recognized, through contrast, through distance, through rarity. Scarcity is not your enemy. It is the very language of desire, respect, and reverence. There are moments you can never forget, not because they were grand, but because of the quiet ache they left behind. Think about the times you were the one always available, the first to answer the phone, the first to step in when someone was in trouble, the first to forgive even when the apology never came. You told yourself this was love, this was loyalty, this was proof of your worth. But in the silence after the favors, after the forgiveness, after the sacrifices, there was a bitter taste. No one noticed. No one said, "I see how much you give." Instead, they began to expect it, as if your abundance were a right they had earned. You didn't feel like a friend or a lover or a partner. You felt like a background figure, invisible, taken for granted, fading into the corners of lives you once poured yourself into. That quiet erasure hurts more than rejection, because rejection at least acknowledges your existence. Being overlooked, that feels like you were never there at all. Relationships cut the deepest. You gave your time, your tenderness, your laughter, your patience. At first, maybe they appreciated it. They looked at you with admiration, spoke words of gratitude, and leaned into your warmth. But over time, it shifted. The admiration turned into assumption. The gratitude turned into entitlement. And your warmth became a background climate they no longer even noticed. You showed up in ways that cost you sleep, energy, and self-respect. You answered every late-night call, forgave every betrayal, stayed long after your heart whispered it was time to go. And what did you get in return? Not reverence, not appreciation. You got silence. You got someone who treated your sacrifices as invisible, because they had grown addicted to the idea that you would always be there. And when you finally dared to withhold, dared to step back, the reaction was almost cruel. They called you distant, selfish, changed, as if your endless giving had been the only reason they recognized your worth. There are social moments, too, woven quietly into your memory. The times you cracked jokes in a group, filled silences with your words, carried conversations so no one felt awkward. At first they laughed, they leaned in, they nodded. But over time your energy was no longer special. It was expected. You stopped being the spark and started being the entertainer, the filler of voids, the one who was always on. And when you grew tired, when you sat in silence hoping someone else might carry the weight, the group felt colder, duller, even resentful, as if you had betrayed them by withholding what they thought belonged to them. The sting was not in being unappreciated once. It was in realizing that appreciation had faded into entitlement. Your abundance made you invisible, and invisibility feels like suffocation when all you wanted was to be seen. Think about work, about ambition, about the times you pushed harder than anyone else. You stayed later, worked longer, gave more than what was written in your contract. You thought the effort would be seen as devotion, that someone would notice the way you carried burdens no one else wanted to lift, but instead of recognition, what came? More work, more expectations, more demands. You became the one who could be counted on to say yes, and so they asked again and again, piling requests on your shoulders because you had taught them to believe your abundance was endless. And when you finally cracked, when the exhaustion seeped into your bones, when you hesitated for the first time, their disappointment was sharp, as though you had broken a silent promise. The truth is, you didn't break a promise. They broke you by mistaking your willingness for infinite capacity. Your abundance once again erased you. And yet, in these painful moments of invisibility, something strange always happens. The moment you withhold, the moment you say no, the moment you disappear, suddenly people feel your absence like a sharp wound. They text more. They ask where you've been. They remember the warmth they once ignored. Scarcity awakens them in ways abundance never did. But it comes too late, doesn't it? You realize they were capable of seeing your value all along. They just needed the shock of your absence to feel it. That realization cuts deeper than their neglect, because it forces you to see the truth. It was never that you weren't enough. It was that you gave too much. And in giving too much, you taught them to stop valuing you. Even in solitude, you have felt the weight of these realizations. Lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, you replay conversations and moments where you gave yourself away, piece by piece. You wonder why they didn't notice, why they didn't honor what cost you so much to give. And slowly, painfully, the clarity comes. It's not that they were incapable of noticing, it's that you had made yourself so abundant, so easily available, that your presence carried no scarcity, and therefore no weight. The very thing you thought would make you unforgettable, your endless giving, made you invisible. Scarcity, which you feared would drive people away, was the only thing that could have made them pause, lean in, and revere your existence. The transformation begins in those quiet nights, in those aching memories, in those realizations that feel like both tragedy and awakening. You see how scarcity has shaped your life without your consent. You see how every moment of invisibility was not proof of your unworthiness, but proof of a universal truth. What is too available becomes overlooked. What is constant becomes background, and what is abundant becomes cheap. Scarcity was never your enemy. Scarcity was the secret you were denying, the weapon you never learned to wield, the mirror that shows you what happens when you give without boundaries. And though the lesson arrives wrapped in scars and silence, it is a lesson that, once seen, can never be There comes a moment when the exhaustion of giving endlessly no longer feels like generosity but like self-betrayal. At first you resist it. You try to silence the small voice that whispers, "Stop." You tell yourself you are strong enough to keep going, loving, forgiving, serving. But in the silence of solitude, when the world no longer demands anything from you, the truth creeps in. You feel how hollow you've become, how thin your spirit feels from pouring out more than you ever received. And instead of shame, there is a strange stillness, a realization that perhaps this emptiness is not weakness but an opening to something you had buried beneath noise and obligations, your own worth. You begin to see that the boundaries you once thought would make you selfish were the very structures needed to protect your soul. This is the start of awakening, when you finally allow silence to reveal what abundance always hid. Awakening is rarely dramatic. It is quiet, almost imperceptible, like light slowly bleeding into a darkened room at dawn. You notice it when you stop apologizing for not being available, when you cancel plans not because you have another obligation, but because you need rest. You feel it when you walk away from conversations that drain you, even if your old self would have stayed out of politeness. You taste it when your no feels cleaner, sharper, more honest than your endless yes. And though people may call you distant, though they may accuse you of changing, you no longer shrink. Because deep inside you know this change is not distance but discovery. It is the rediscovery of your rarity. Scarcity becomes your quiet strength, not a weapon of manipulation, but a gentle shield that protects the essence you once scattered without thought. The scars you carry whisper the most powerful truths. Every scar is evidence that you once gave too much, stayed too long, trusted too easily. And though you may look at them with regret, they are not signs of failure. They are signs of awakening. Scars teach you where your boundaries should have been. Scars remind you that not everyone deserves your softness. Not everyone has earned your trust. Not everyone should be handed the keys to your soul. In solitude, you begin to trace these scars like constellations, each one pointing to the same truth. Abundance without boundaries is self-destruction. Scarcity is not about withholding love, but about ensuring that your love is not squandered by those who cannot hold it. The pain you endured becomes the lesson that transforms you, the raw material of your awakening. There is beauty in absence, a beauty you could not see before. When you step back, when you let your silence fill the spaces you once flooded with noise, something shifts. Your absence becomes louder than your presence ever was. People who once overlooked you begin to notice the void you leave behind. But more importantly, you begin to notice yourself. You hear your own thoughts without interruption. You feel your own energy without depletion. You realize how sacred your time, your attention, your love truly are. In that silence, you are no longer begging to be valued. You are valuing yourself. The awakening is not that others finally see you, but that you finally see yourself. You understand that scarcity is not emptiness. It is depth. It is not loss. It is reverence. Imagery becomes alive during this awakening. You feel like a flame that once burned uncontrollably, consuming everything around it, but now has learned to burn with precision, with intention, with direction. You feel like a well that once overflowed until it ran dry, but now guards its waters so they remain fresh, powerful, life-giving. You feel like light breaking through cracks, not flooding the room in desperation, but piercing the darkness with purpose. Solitude is no longer your punishment. It is your sanctuary. Silence is no longer emptiness. It is the music of your rebirth. And in that stillness, you begin to see scarcity not as something dangerous, but as something divine. Awakening reshapes the way you walk through the world. Where once you rushed to prove yourself, now you move slowly, intentionally. Where once you chased validation, now you stand rooted in your own essence. Where once you feared rejection, now you understand that rejection is simply a misalignment of value, not proof of inadequacy. You begin to walk away from tables where your worth is bargained, because you know your presence is not a currency. It is a gift. You begin to hold your laughter for those who can feel its rarity, to save your softness for those who can cradle it without breaking it. This restraint does not make you colder. It makes you clearer. And in that clarity you discover a strength you never thought you had, the strength to let go. The awakening is not about becoming untouchable. It is not about walling yourself off from the world or hiding in bitterness. It is about remembering that you are finite, and that finiteness is sacred. You do not need to be everywhere for everyone. You do not need to give endlessly to prove your love. You do not need to sacrifice yourself to be worthy. Scarcity becomes the language of your soul, a reminder that what is rare is revered, and you too are rare. For the first time, you no longer beg for belonging. You create it within yourself. You no longer search for validation. You embody it. And in that embodiment, in that quiet self-reverence, you awaken to the truth that scarcity is not the absence of love, but the presence of self-worth. There is a quiet revolution that begins the moment you stop measuring your worth through the eyes of others and begin to protect the scarce essence within you. For so long you believed that your value lived in how much you could give away, how much of yourself you could stretch thin to be chosen, admired, accepted. But scarcity teaches a different lesson. It whispers that what makes something valuable is not its endless availability, but its finite presence. You begin to see yourself not as a currency to be spent recklessly, but as a force that demands reverence. The awakening you have walked through, with its scars and silences, has shaped a truth impossible to unsee. You are not meant to be consumed endlessly. You are meant to be cherished, and for that you must guard your scarcity. This realization is not arrogance. It is liberation. You finally understand that self-worth is not proven by proving yourself to others. It is proven by protecting what makes you rare. This revolution is not loud. It does not require grand declarations or public displays. It lives in the smallest, quietest choices you make each day. It lives in the decision to say no when your soul whispers that you are tired. It lives in the courage to walk away from conversations, places, and people that demand too much but give too little. It lives in the silence you allow to stretch instead of rushing to fill it with explanations or justification. It lives in the sacred pause, where you realize your time, your presence, your love are not obligations, they are offerings. And offerings must be given with intention, not drained by demand. This quiet revolution reshapes the rhythm of your life. It teaches you that protecting your scarcity is not selfishness, but the deepest form of self-respect. The truth becomes clearer the more you live it. The real revolution has nothing to do with changing how others see you, and everything to do with how you see yourself. You no longer chase validation because you realize that validation is an endless desert. You can pour yourself into it forever and still never fill it. Instead, you choose to validate yourself by honoring your limits, by embracing your scars, by treating your presence as something sacred. This is the inner transformation that shifts everything. Because once you no longer need the applause of others to feel worthy, you move through the world differently. You are not desperate, you are deliberate. You are not abundant to the point of invisibility, you are rare to the point of reverence. The revolution does not roar, but it reshapes every room you enter. Scarcity, once feared as a weakness, becomes your greatest strength. You realize that it is not about manipulation, not about playing games, not about withholding for the sake of control. It is about living in alignment with the truth that you are finite, and that finiteness makes you precious. Like light in darkness, your presence shines more deeply because it is not constant. Like silence between notes, your absence creates a rhythm that makes your presence meaningful. This is why the revolution is not external, but internal. It is not about forcing others to respect you. It is about embodying respect for yourself so profoundly that others have no choice but to meet you at that level or fall away. And when they fall away, you do not chase them, because you know what remains will be real, will be worthy, will be aligned. There is an empowerment in this clarity that nothing else can touch. For the first time, you are not begging for belonging, you are rooted in it. For the first time, you are not proving your worth, you are living it. For the first time, you are not running from solitude, you are embracing it as your sanctuary. Scarcity transforms from a shadow into a crown, and in wearing it, you no longer feel the frantic pull to be everywhere, to be everything, to be infinite. To repair, you are free from that illusion. You recognize that what makes you magnetic is not your constant availability, but the sacred way you choose when, where, and with whom to share yourself. And in this sacred choice, you reclaim a power that was always yours. And so the conclusion is not an ending, but an invitation. An invitation to step into your own revolution, the kind that does not seek outward validation, but inward transformation. The world may not notice immediately, but you will feel it. The strength in your silence, the depth in your solitude, the beauty in your scars. The dangerous power of scarcity will no longer frighten you, because you will understand that it is not danger at all. It is dignity. Protect your essence, guard your presence, honor your rarity. The real revolution has always been within, waiting for you to see it. And once you do, your life no longer becomes a plea for recognition. It becomes a quiet, unshakable declaration. You were always enough.